Welcome back to DJ Coffee Talk. Today we sit down with a deceptively young yet incredibly talented producer from Toronto to share a cup of coffee. Virtually, of course. Dan Sanchez, more prominently known as Paper Skies, is thought of as a pioneer of the emerging subgenre of color bass. For the less genre-specific listeners we have out there, he could be categorized as a melodic dubstep producer. Pulling from countless inspirations while curating his own sound, Paper Skies consistently puts out incredible songs with his signature liquid and crystally melodic textures that tend to mesmerize you. Dan has an incredible work ethic to go along with his genuine personality and knack for great music. In 2019, he launched 04 Collective, an independent record label that saw immense success for the relatively short amount of time that he operated it. He is the true definition of a hustler, and we see nothing but continued success for him in the future. We were extremely excited to sit down with Paper Skies for many reasons, but what intrigued us most about him was the seemingly random but equally awesome collection of passions that he has outside of music, ranging from fashion to urban exploration. But more on that later. Without further delay, here's Paper Skies' most recent release titled Fold. Don't get too lost in the sauce because we dive right into conversation after that. So, we're here with Dan, Paper Skies. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you, man.
Absolutely, man. How's it going, guys?
Okay, so I got a fun question to start off the interview with. Why, on God's green earth, do you put milk in the bowl before your cereal?
How did you know that? How did you know that I do that? You guys have been going too deep in my Twitter. Okay, I literally, before this interview, explained that exact thing to somebody like 10 minutes prior, so I've got it fresh in my mind. But think of it like this. When you put a lot of cereal, and you put the correct cereal to milk ratio, but you put the cereal first, sometimes when you're eating the cereal, you get to a point of like, the milk starts getting a little low, but there's still a lot of cereal left, right?
Right.
What happens? What does it leave the cereal? Soggy, right? If you like soggy cereal and that's your thing, then hey, all power to you. But personally, I'm like, nah, soggy cereal ain't it. So I put the milk first because then when you fill your bowl of milk, you can just only kind of like fill the top layer of that milk with cereal and have fresh cereal every time you eat just by continuously pouring instead of having this big ass bowl of cereal and then having to keep going with the milk where it gets soggier, right?
Okay, I follow the logic.
Come on.
Convince me to start.
I'm not here to convert anybody or anything, but like if you're a cereal kind of person first, and
interviews,
no hate to you, I'm just looking to.
I wanted to talk about. That was
it. What would you say your favorite cereal is? Do you have a favorite?
Definitely, easily Mini Wheats and Reese Puffs. I like Reese Puffs for the straight up like chocolatey, sugary flavor they have, and then Mini Wheats because it's kind of the opposite of that, but still has a little bit of a sugary aspect.
Get a little sugar rush.
There you
go. Curious, I've seen you sipping in a couple of interviews. You have your drink with you. Is that some coffee?
I made a little homemade espresso iced coffee thing. I just do like a shot and a half of espresso. And then I fill up the whole remainder of the cup with milk. But throw in some ice cubes and a little bit of chocolate Nesquik, just like barely any at the top to give it some flavor. And yeah, it tastes pretty similar to like a McDonald's iced coffee.
Oh, that sounds delicious. We're barbarians over here with just like a pot of wine.
Gotta brew it.
Okay, so now that we got the serious question out of the way, and wanted to make sure we started with that.
On a solid note, yeah.
Let us know kind of what your background with music is. You're obviously an EDM producer now. Do you have a background with music? Or?
Yeah, I don't have it laid out here right now. I actually just removed my keyboard that was in here, but I've been playing piano since I was young. Nothing too crazy or professional. I don't actually have a whole lot of theory backing me. But I grew up with a lot of, I guess, just ear training. Like I was always surrounded by music growing up constantly. Even my family while growing up, as weird as it sounds, would like play me like classical music while I was going to bed because they believed it would make me smarter or something. I don't know if that holds true, but we'll see. With that though, I just kept working on the piano stuff. I developed, I think, a pretty strong ear for music and being able to just pick up a chord progression without knowing too much of the knowledge from it. And then started producing EDM, literally for the reason of like, I always wanted to do EDM specifically. I was a huge EDM nerd and fanatic. I would like draw my favorite artist logos and pin them on my wall and stuff next to my bed when I go to sleep. And I always just thought it would be this super overwhelmingly expensive career option to get into with all the equipment required and everything. But after watching a Virtual Riot live stream, I realized immediately after that you can just download the demo of your favorite DAW and just get right into it. So I did that. The career started, and I kind of worked backwards. I started learning a lot of the theory and stuff afterwards. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with where I am right now in terms of music. I'm going to stick with the EDM stuff for sure, but trying to just learn as much as I can musically in any genres, really.
And did you go straight into dubstep, melodic dubstep specifically, or did you explore a couple genres before you got?
I explored. I knew I wanted to get into melodic dubstep because Virtual Riot was always my favorite artist at the time. I listened to a lot of like him, Chime, Panda Eyes, guys like that who were kind of like I don't know. I feel like some of the founding guys to what is now color bass or the genre of like melodic dubstep that isn't particularly like saw stacks, the more Seven Lion route of melodic dubstep, but more like the actual bass heavy kind of elements that you find in a lot of the melodic stuff nowadays. But a lot of them, I got right into it, but I experimented with like house and a little bit of like heavier dubstep stuff. I guess kind of like more rhythm before rhythm was like a huge, big thing. I didn't even really know what I was doing. And eventually just narrowed down my focus to, I'm going to make music that I like. And my goal every time I start a song, ever since I first started producing, is just to make my favorite song. And I still don't think I'm ever going to produce my favorite song. But if you keep that as your goal in mind, I think you're going to kind of come out with something that you really enjoy, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like you kind of learn music by ear first, and then like kind of you said work backwards.
Yeah.
Do you think that worked out fine for you? Looking back on it, do you wish you would have known theory earlier, or do you think that works out just fine?
I think it depends on the person, but for me, it worked out totally fine. Like I'm not going to act like I have this huge knowledge of theory now. I didn't do too much into it, but I wanted to, of course, understand the basics of, what a proper chord progression was, how to keep your music in key and stuff. And I already had an idea of it just from having a strong ear before. I don't think I've ever released a song, even before learning about theory, that was like out of key or anything. But then having those, I think like music theory, it should be used as a tool. It's not something that's required to get into music, but just like having Serum or Harmor as like an extra tool to create sounds, I think knowing music theory just lets you kind of like push your creative boundaries a little bit more as a tool, as opposed to like, you need this in order to make this type of music. Anyone can make anything as long as you're creative enough. There are people that make stuff that sounds like a crazy jazzy or classical ballad, and they might not know anything about music theory, but they'll do it wonderfully as long as like they have the right creativity for it. But yeah, I think it just helps open up the doors for people and let them try new things.
When it comes to you kind of creating songs, is it more, sudden inspiration, then you get into creating what you're going to create? Or you always you see a model of something you really look up to, because you were saying like my favorite song, I want to make my favorite song. Mm-hmm. You see a model, a blueprint, and then you try to kind of emulate that and give it your own flavor? Or is it kind of like you're pulling inspirations from different parts of your life and you're like, this is kind of what I'm feeling, I'm trying to translate it into something, and you kind of go through this process of making that into sound, which is so crazy. I think it's so crazy with music production that people do that, but it's like, I just want to hear your perspective on what your process is doing the emotions you grapple with.
I think you actually did a really good job of saying it yourself. Like it's like, I don't really have one method that I do in stepping into music. It's the same thing as like, I don't know, playing a video game. You do it because you're excited to play that video game, and you don't know the type of experience that you're going to get at it if you've never done it before. It just kind of comes naturally, and it's like a choose your own adventure where you can explore and try different things, and you'll come out with different results every time. Like that idea of the blueprint in your head, I think is always going to be there for producers when they step into the DAW, because you need to have some sort of idea in order to start producing. If you don't have any ideas, then where are you starting from? But yeah, there are times where I'm like just totally out of like not knowing what I should do. And I'll just lay down like a drum loop and be like, you know what? I think this chord progression would be cool with this particular loop. And then I'll throw in the chord progression. And now if the chords are in there, I'm like, I'm going to swap out this piano sound for like a guitar sound. That'd be dope. And it keeps adding and adding and adding. And the next thing you know, you have like a finished product that maybe you weren't expecting. But yeah, there are definitely times though where I've gone in and like been like, this is the song that I'm going to reference. I want my mix to sound like this song. And I'll just take like 5 or 6 tracks and try and make a song that sounds like a combination of all those little things that I liked about them, you know? And again, you're never going to do it flawlessly. I can't say that I've perfected any of my songs or got them to a point where I'm like, this is the definitive Paper Sky song. But
yeah,
you get closer with every revision, you know?
Yeah, right process, right?
Yeah.
I think it's funny that it's cool. You said your family would play classical music when you were a kid.
Yeah.
Do you still like classical music?
I do. I definitely do.
Right on. That's dope. And then how does your family kind of approach your music? Because they seem like they like classical. They enjoy good music. Are they totally on board?
Not particularly, no. Like you would think that the whole thing of like they maybe listen to classical that they would be like a big music sort of family, but they were never really too into it. When I first brought them up the idea of being producer, they kind of shied away from it a little bit. So I downloaded the demo of FL Studio myself, and I used that for a couple months. And at the time, I was like 13 or 14 or something, and my dad had cut off the Wi-Fi in the house for like the last 3 months to try and prove to us like, oh, you're using too much Wi-Fi, and now that you don't have Wi-Fi, look how boring your lives are. You need to find things to do, right? Sure. But I kind of totally went against the grain, and instead of like, I couldn't be on my laptop at home anymore, so I thought, okay, I'll just grab my laptop and be on it somewhere else. So I take it over to this internet cafe, and that's where I downloaded the demo. Yeah. I was watching the Virtual Riot live stream by getting my mom's phone, turning on her hotspot, watching it from my phone. And then I was complaining. I was like, oh, how much does it cost to get started in production? And someone was like, you just need to get this free demo. Get either Ableton or Cubase or FL Studio or something. And I stuck with FL because I got an ad for it on my computer when I was at that internet cafe. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to download this. So I did it. And then about a month later, Wi-Fi is still off. I had no idea that I'd even downloaded FL Studio. It totally went past my mind. And I was looking at my downloads folder for Flash games, and I saw FL Studio installer. And I was like, you know what? I might as well finish up kind of what I started. I'm going to install this. I did that. I created my first song that day, rendered the whole thing out. And I was like, I need a SoundCloud now. So I made my current existing SoundCloud page that day, uploaded it to SoundCloud. And then after a few months of producing, my family was like, you know what, this might be a good idea. So they actually purchased me FL. I'm super, super lucky for that. But they did it because they thought it would be a cool hobby. I don't think they ever thought it would turn into like a potential money-making sort of career thing. It's not that it is right now. I mean, I'm just doing it for fun. Right. But I see potential now to, I guess, to push it further and to make it, not only something I enjoy, but something that I can potentially, like push as a future. Yeah. I don't think they were expecting that, but I think they're proud. And they're just hoping that I obviously do well with it. They don't want to see me go down the whole, like, kid who gets too big of the cake and then, overwhelms himself and gets the sugar high or whatever, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And in terms of, I know it doesn't seem like, you love creating music and you're so focused on the process of creating music. That's kind of, you're not it's nice to make money doing it, but you're focused on the process of making music.
Yeah.
Music for the sake of making music. But in terms of monetizing your creative work, what's your strategy of doing that at this point in your life? Is it getting as many viewers as possible and then going from there? Is it, collaborating with collectives? Is it live shows? How do artists in today's world go about, making money in their craft?
With COVID, it's tough. My focus has definitely not been to make money. Like it's something that like, I feel like I'm a very business-oriented person when it comes to music, and I'm not going to lie. Some of my friends, like producer friends, Shark, Skybreak, those guys, they give me shit about it every once in a while. But it's just the way I am. I love like seeing how the industry works behind the music and how the people that aren't involved in the production process at all are making money themselves and doing things. And like, yeah, you start to realize there's tons of ways in the music industry that you can make money. It just might not be the ways that you're willing to go down. So like to any producers, I would just recommend like, think about what you like to do more specifically and find a way to monetize it. It's the same thing as how you can find a way to promote it. Like me personally, I like, fashion, urban exploration stuff. So I'm constantly posting about it on my socials. And through that, I've been able to meet like so many cool artists that I never thought I would talk to, not because they're into my music really, but just because they're into the same hobbies that I am. And they'll message me or get back to my story like, oh, yo, that outfit was dope. And then we'll start talking, become friends. So it's the same thing with the making money. Like you have to find parts about yourself, I think, that you enjoy and find ways to monetize it. Whether it's like, you enjoy making like certain specific sounds. So you put out a sample pack, or you like, teaching people, or you like being social. So you start like doing lessons and things. There's a whole bunch of options that I don't think I'm really prepared to like go through off the top of my head. But I've been experimenting a lot myself with just trying to find ways to do things. Not too much to the point, again, that money is my focus. Like this whole thing is just a hobby and I do it for fun, and I'm super, super grateful for all the support that I've gotten. But I think it's important to, like, as an artist, look at the business side of music and think, okay, what can I be doing better here? Not just focus on the music.
Yeah, I think it's something like you kind of hinted at this. Some artists, maybe the personality, whatever, they don't put that much emphasis or think too much on the business side of things. What do you think are some of the ways that artists can get kind of screwed over in a sense when it comes, if they're not paying attention to the business side of things? Like, are there certain things that are bad?
I think there's three. Okay, I'm going to say this pretty generally. This isn't like the way it is, but I said there's three types of producers. There's the producer that's doing it 100% for fun. Yeah. There's the producer that does it because they want to be successful. And then there's the producer who does a little bit of both, right? And I think that determines the type of lifestyle or the type of management or career you need to live out. Like if you're doing it strictly just for fun, you're never going to need a manager. You're never going to need to worry about bookings or anything like that. You're doing it just for fun. If you're doing it to be successful, get a manager, get people that know the industry, that are going to manage you, that are going to bring you to success. And as much as I might hate to say it, you're probably not going to learn as much as the person that's genuinely passionate about the craft. Like you're not going to be some stellar musician that other musicians look up to. But if you want tons of people to know who you are, then go down that industry route 100%. There's nothing wrong with that. But me personally, it's like I'm not managed by anybody right now. And it's not because I don't want to see any kind of big success like that. But I want to learn as much as I can about the industry myself before I let someone take over that job for me. So that way I can still focus on being as creative as I want to be and put out the songs that I like without being like guided by management too much or something. And I can understand what they're doing behind the scenes. I think the more you include yourself in the management process, the less worried you have to be about management controlling you as an artist, because now you're in that whole circle. You're in the loop. You're telling them what to do just in the same way that they're telling you what to do, right?
Yeah. Is your focus, looking down the line in the next couple of years, are you interested in creating an independent label for yourself? Or are you looking more at collaborating with other bigger labels? And do you feel like your knowledge of the business side of it would protect you from ever, giving up the control of your music if you were to go to a bigger label?
Mm-hmm. In the EDM industry, so far in my experience, I haven't been too concerned with like other labels because most of it is just signing singles, right? I think compared to like a lot of the rap and pop industry, I'm sure it's the same way in the EDM industry when you get to a certain point. But they're not signing you as an artist. You're not giving away any of your personal rights. You're not giving away the rights to like a full album's worth of stuff where you literally don't claim any of the income. A lot of these labels are just like small EPs, small singles, everything's straightforward. They give you all the information. And that's why it's like I haven't needed to have a manager yet because it's very manageable for me. When they send me a contract, all the information that I need to know is there. I'm able to read through it with no problems. So it's like, what reason would there be to hire someone to just do that job for me when I can do it myself, right? But when it does get to that point of like you're signing away your rights as an artist and you have to make certain albums and certain EPs by this date in order to stay with this label, then I think you need other people to help you out because you need to be able to focus on the craft. You need to be able to focus on the music. And as much as you like the business side and want to understand it, you can't focus on it as much,
Mm-hmm. And do you feel like your background as a graphic artist kind of allows you to express your own brand a lot more efficiently?
Yeah, definitely. Like since I started off the graphic design stuff at the same time that I started the music.
What age was that again? Because you were saying about like 12, 13.
I was like 13, 14. I think It was 6 years ago, right? So I'm 19 right now. It was 6 years ago. And I dropped that first song on my SoundCloud and it had no artwork. And I went to school the next day and I wanted to show my friend But I wasn't able to show them. I mean, I could have showed them, but I didn't really want to because I was like, oh, there's no artwork. This looks so lame, you know? So I got this free software called Pixlr, which is like an online Photoshop with half the capabilities, and made some really shitty album art in it. And that was the start of my graphic design career. And not having to hire somebody for my entire career to do any of my artwork. I can do my own banners, logo, like designs, everything. I even do my own animations for YouTube. It has probably saved me like thousands of dollars in the long run if I think about the past 6 years. So yeah, I guess if anyone's watching this and you're new into it, like get into graphics because it's a really huge asset. And I think the more you know that involves just the entertainment scope in general, whether it's even weird things like acting and stuff, I think it all connects in one way or another. You know what I mean? Whether it's like having an Instagram presence and making videos or doing like TikToks or something, like anything entertainment wise will help you as a musician in the music industry. You just need to explore.
Interesting. And do you think, as far as like your learning process, as you're learning to produce music, do you think learning those other skills alongside helped you break up maybe some of the monotony of learning those skills, like being able to go to something different?
Yeah. It was like a fun process because I was enjoying the whole thing through and I never felt like I was forcing myself to do anything. Like some people have asked me like, oh, why haven't you learned Ableton yet or a different DAW than FL Studio? And it's literally just because like I haven't had a reason for it yet. It's not that I don't want to. Like it sounds cool, but like that wouldn't serve me any benefit other than, you know, my mixes could like potentially be a little better. Maybe I might find some new VST that I like or something. But the things like artwork and like my next step for me personally, I want to learn how to code. So that way as a graphic designer, I can fully build my own websites without having to, again, have that second party person, right? So that's a need that I like genuinely want to be able to learn that will help me excel my career. And it's just more things I can do by myself without hiring somebody. So I think it's better to focus on the things like that can actually push you ahead. And like, what are the new creative outlets that, again, you're going to enjoy and you can learn naturally. You don't have to force yourself and then help you out in the process, right?
I'm just going to learn coding on the side. You know,
right?
It's such a driven person. I mean, it seems like it, but is it something that you've developed or something that just comes naturally to you?
It's definitely developed. Like there was a point where I wasn't driven at all, and I don't think I've ever talked about this at all through Paper Skies, and I'm not 100% ready to yet, so I'll be a bit shallow with it. But there was a really, really tough time in my life that I went through when about the time I was a year or two into producing, and it was my first years of high school, grade 9 and 10. And I went through an extremely, extremely challenging time in my life that involved my family and my friends and school and everything. And I had to go through a lot of different things. But I think that like whenever you get to a low point in your life, it lets you learn from that and get up, right? And I think only because I've hit like my absolute like lowest point that I've been able to be as efficient and hardworking as I am, because I never want to let myself get to that point, first of all, again. And then second of all, like I just find that like, especially with COVID right now, if you let yourself get bored, that's the worst thing that you can do because you're just going to drive yourself absolutely crazy. Even if you don't like it, you need to stay productive because doing something is better than doing nothing at all, you know?
And music, it's a passion for you, and is it also kind of like medicine in some sense for you? And you can kind of go shallow into this if you want to, if you don't.
Yeah, definitely.
Paper Skies, but it's almost like it's like medicine. It's an outlet for you. It brings life into your life. Kind of helps you stay out of the dark times and stay into a better place in your life. And is that kind of one of your motivations as an artist, is to help people be in a better state of mind and a better headspace?
In a way, I don't want to say anymore that music is that to me. I still love producing and I do it all the time. And it's obviously it's a big hobby of mine. But at the time it was definitely like something to escape it all, you know, like I was going through a lot of tough things and really like, to me, it felt like the only good thing that I had going on in my life was the music career and the fact that I was enjoying whenever I was producing. Right. So that was at the time, but it's like now that, you know, life is going well for me, things are going smoothly. Music is still just as much like a creative release for me able to express myself and do what I enjoy. But it's a lot less of a crutch where it's like, if I'm in a bad mood, I won't be like, oh, I need to produce to feel better. It's like, there's a multitude of things that, you know, I can do to just feel good about myself, which is important to have. I think that's the number one thing, especially in this time with COVID when everyone's by themselves and alone. Just find things that make you happy and stick to them until this is over. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that might be a really good transition. So what are some of the things that you do use to make yourself feel better? What type of things, aside from music, obviously, make you happy? What are you into?
I personally just try to interact with as many people as I can, obviously, because the more connections you have in life, the better. It'll take you to bigger places, but you'll be surprised. I mean, like the amount of people online that I've met that are just like such cool people that I talk to almost on the daily now, guys that I never knew would have existed. And vice versa. I'm sure there are tons of people that if it weren't for quarantine, wouldn't have met me and I wouldn't become friends with them. But I think trying to be as social as possible through a time of loneliness is the number one thing that's kept me all right. But yeah, if not the music, then I do a little bit of photography on the side, playing video games with friends and stuff. Just trying to stay productive, get schoolwork done, work. Back when I was working a job, I recently actually sadly lost my job because the firm that I was working at, the graphic design firm, they closed down just because they weren't getting enough sales and everything. But yeah, even having a job at the time was like just something nice to just pass the time, stay productive, push my graphic design skills, just keep working on things.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting how we're kind of evolving in a way to be social digitally more so now that we have like the lack of physical connection. Is it to you, is it a different type of connection? Because I know my buddy that gave me the insight for the initial question for you, he's in your Discord and he says it's awesome and that he really vibes with everybody in the Discord. Nice. Like, is that the same for you in terms of interaction, being able to interact with people digitally as opposed to face to face?
Not particularly. Like, I have a bit of a closer group of friends and producers, both from like high school and that I've known through the years that I talk to pretty often on Discord. And those guys, like, I think it's hard to expect Discord to fill the same gap as like an actual in-person friendship would. I don't think it ever will. But having that group in particular really has, just because like we've all got our cameras on, we're all chatting, we're all getting to know each other. And I think when you see the faces behind and everything, and you have a lot of talks that aren't just about music, but like your personal life and how you're doing and things, like it does fill the gap of that connection because you're talking about real things, When I'm in the Paper Skies server, like I love talking to all the listeners in there and everything. Like it feels, I don't even like saying fans because like that word just doesn't feel comfortable to me yet. Again, knowing that this is a hobby and that I'm doing this for fun and everything. But yeah, for all the listeners that are in there and everything, it's like I love chatting with them, but it'll never be the same thing as having like, a one-on-one conversation with a best friend or something, right? So I think having both of those interactions, being able to interact with people you haven't met, and then keeping your close circles close and making sure that the relationship is a real friendship. You're talking about real things, doing real things. It fills the gap for me at least, because especially now I've gotten used to it with COVID. But I can't say it'll be the same for everybody. Right?
Have you gotten to a point where it's a oddball question, but have you gotten to the point with your artistry where has it changed any part of your relationships with people? Has it become either like a barrier or like has it changed any type of relationship in your life?
I want to say so. With my friends, I don't think too much has changed. Like they just still see me as Dan, the guy that they hang around with new in high school and everything. But for like the listeners and even the ones that, like my producer friends that I've kept around for years and years, there's definitely a little bit different of an approach. Like now that I guess I'm a bit of a bigger artist. You'll have people that I haven't talked to in years, like messaging me being like, oh, I'm trying out this color-based genre. Like, what do you think of this? Whereas before they'd be like hitting me up with a funny meme or something. It feels like a lot more people see me as a professional now. And when people message me, they try to be a lot more like polite and sincere with things. And I appreciate that. I think that's the right way to go about it if you're talking to somebody you don't know. But yeah, if it's a friend of mine, like I just want people to know, like, I'm still me. I'm still just a kid sitting in the basement making music, doing it for fun. Like I'm still fucking around. Hit me up with whatever.
What were some of your original? So we'll go. I want to push it back before EDM. What were some of your pre-EDM music genres you're into?
Well, I can't say before the EDM I was into too much. I would just listen to whatever was on the radio. But besides EDM, like nowadays, I listen to a lot of old instrumental hip hop and stuff. I'm a huge fan of like the production aspect behind that. I'll turn this over quickly. I've got a whole bunch of vinyls down there that I collect. And it's guys like, I don't know, Jay Dilla. I'm tripping out right now. I'm tripping out so hard. Pete Rock. One more person. Come on. MF Doom. Okay, there you go. It's 3. That's all I need to say. I'm getting pressure to say names now. But yeah, I can promise you I listen to a lot of that stuff. I collect a bunch of random vinyls that I find. And yeah, I love listening to more down tempo, chill, just like hip hop beats and stuff. And I'm not talking about like the trap beats where you've got the crazy going off hi-hats, but more of that like lo-fi-esque sitting, drinking a coffee type feel. You know, I can get some work done to it.
Yeah. What's your listening pleasures like now? Do you stick to listening to the genre you produce in? Are you all over the place, or?
I'm pretty all over the place. I've got 3 playlists on Spotify for anyone that's listening right now if they're interested. And I listen to those playlists like religiously, like those basically all that I listen to. And it's my Skies Selects playlist, which is like all of my favorite EDM songs over the years. And it can go from like house music to dubstep to future-based anything. And then I have my Skies Drops playlist, which is like all the heavy dubstep stuff that I listen to. And that's like, I don't know, more like less heavy dubstep to like tear out stuff. Like I'll listen to even like the heaviest shit, despite not making it. And then I have the Skies Vibes playlist, which is all of my like lo-fi, instrumental hip hop, chill, down tempo stuff, ambient music, even some of the classical stuff that I was mentioning earlier. So it's a bit of a mixed bag.
And you're probably one of the most articulate people I've heard talk about like different types of subgenres. Like, how deep do you go into subgenres of EDM?
In EDM, very deep. Like I'd say like as much as I can, you know, it's just that idea again, like I want to learn as much as I can about the industry and the genres and what's popular, what's trending. Like, so yeah, it's all over the place. You've got like, I don't know, classical genres, like just dubstep, you know, straight up dubstep. And you can go as deep into being like, oh, you know, the new future rhythm wave that's coming up, which is like already like a subgenre and a subgenre and a subgenre, which is totally fine. You know, people can do what they want. But yeah, it's crazy how deep it goes. And now that like people are starting to take notice of that, I didn't think that like as many people as they would fall into the genres of color bass and future rhythm specifically. But I'm seeing so many people talking about it on Twitter and stuff. And it's like kind of shocking. I enjoy it. Cool.
It is interesting how just so many different, like, you know, intricacies that differentiate the music. But it's cool because it seems like it can go on forever. Like, you know,
yeah, and it's small things. It's like I was saying before, like when I used to just classify myself as a melodic dubstep producer, not even like if I'm talking to someone I don't know, I'm an electronic producer. That's it. Right, straightforward to the point. You get the idea. I do the computer shit. I type the buttons. That's it. But like it can go as specific as like if it's someone who knows their shit, I'll go up to them and be like, oh, I'm a melodic dubstep producer. And they instantly assume 7 lions with the big super saws and like that typical like pull your heart out sort of feel. But I'm like neither that and neither dubstep. I'm like this weird subcategory. So that's why I like where these genres come into place because it helps me be a bit more specific to people who understand it. But I'm also not the person that like, if I've met you for the first time, I'm like, oh, I'm color bass, which is actually a subgenre of electronic music that combines this element and this like, fuck off, man. Just say it how it is.
Their eyes glaze over.
Do you see yourself, is it purposeful that you're trying to stick into a certain subgenre to create a brand for yourself, or is that really what you just see yourself producing, or do you think you'll move around?
I just like it. I just make what I like. You know, if it sounds good to me, I hope it sounds good to other people, and I'll put it out. And if they like it, then fuck yeah, dude. Like that's as straightforward as it is. I don't know. There's not a whole lot of like feeling like I need to stay within a certain genre, and I feel like, especially the releases that I have coming out recently, they pay like a really nice homage to the trends that are coming up right now of color bass, but also like the old style that I've been doing for years, which is literally just like saw stats with lead melodies and stuff, you know? Mm. I don't know. I think I have a big focus on melody, and that's where I kind of fall away from the dubstep category. It's because as much as I would love to just have a huge discography of shows that people can break their neck to at a set, I'm just not that, you know?
So I saw you were recently doing a live stream on Instagram for streetwear. And when did you get into streetwear? Where are you trying to go with that? It seems like that's another passion of yours. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
In grade 9, I think this is where everybody who gets into any type of fashion probably gets it from, unless they get it from their parents or their friend group, whatever. But like, I was getting bullied for my style all the time, because this is part of the whole thing, grade 9 and 10, but I was hanging around a bunch of guys that probably weren't within the best interest of me to hang around with. And they weren't people that went to my school. They were just genuinely bad people to be around with. And they were like trying to like super dictate my style, because I came up like, you know, plain white t-shirt and jeans, like you're just your average kid. And they were all into like all these crazy brands and all these big names and stuff. And I really wanted to start learning about it. And there was one particular guy who was like more into the fashion aspect of it, while most of the people were just into the hype street stuff. This one dude like really cared about the quality and the name brand and everything. And I just started talking to him more, got more into it personally. And then, it just developed over the years. And something about when quarantine hit, I just started to like extra fall in love with it, even though I already was. And now just to make the days feel normal, I'll put on a nice little outfit or something just every morning, literally just so, the normal can feel more normal. Right.
Right. Well, it's cool because it's a different way to express yourself with whoever you're feeling that day. I think that's the cool thing about it.
In grade like 11, 12-ish, I remember like trying to post outfits that I was putting together because I was really proud of them and I just liked fashion and stuff. And it was the same thing. I was in high school and there was this whole mentality like, oh, you like fashion? That's so gay, man.
Yeah, exactly.
I could not stand that. First of all, getting called gay in the first place, like that's just not even like an attack. Like, what the hell are you trying to say? Second of all, like the clothing relating, I don't know. It just seemed like a bunch of bullshit. But now that things are done, it's like, I don't know. I just feel a lot more confident with myself. And I think being in isolation lets you learn a lot more about yourself and be comfortable with those things. Because if I were to make a post of me in a sick outfit that I think is sick and somebody were to reply like, oh, I don't know, like in this case, you're like, you look like a fucking marshmallow or something, I'd be like, nice, dude, keep it up.
It's funny you say that though, because I was looking through Twitter, but you responded to a comment and someone was like critiquing your fit. And then you responded to him and you said a really cool way. I forgot exactly what you said, but you said like a cool positive spin on it. And I was like, that's a cool way to respond to a criticism. You're like, You're like, I wish my grandma made me fit like that, or like made a fit for to be like that.
Yeah, I think it was actually somebody had said, they were like, oh, you dress like my grandma or something like that. I was like, damn, your grandma must dress fucking sick then or something like that. Right? But I don't know. It's like, people can say negative comments, but I got to be honest, like I've always, not always, but since like the middle point of high school and such, I've always been that type of person that like, if you're saying anything negative to me, I really don't care. It's not in my best interest. Like I'm happy with myself. I know what I'm doing. If you don't like it, there are millions and millions and millions of people in the world who haven't even seen it yet and could give it a shot. Right. So,
right. It's cool. That ties into how you talk about your music too, though. Because you'll be like, if you don't fuck with it, you don't fuck with it. But I'm just going to throw it out here and see. I mean,
I was going to put out a tweet on it today, but I decided not to. But I was going to say, like, it's so weird that, like, I don't know, people will say, like, oh, I love melodic music and stuff. And I'll show them my stuff, and they might not be a fan of it or something like that, right? And instantly, they'll kind of think that I take offense to that. And it's like, nah, man, like, you can like what you like. Like, nobody has to feel obliged to like things. And that's the worst feeling for me. And that's another thing that was mentioned earlier. You were saying like, oh, do people look at you different, as you've grown as an artist? And it's like, there are times where people will like, I don't know, pretend to like the stuff that I'm doing just because I'm a big artist, or the other way around, like maybe they do enjoy it. And I can tell that they're just trying to be super negative about it because they have this impression of me being like some person who only cares about himself and all this stuff because I have this many followers. And it's like, stop all the assuming, man. You like it or you don't. You can be honest with me. I'm not going to take offense to it. And I think, when people voice negative concerns online, it gets taken too negatively. People got to just take a step back and like realize it's okay to have criticism. Spin it around if you want to. You can make yourself happy, right?
Yeah.
That's a great way to.
Well, it's like, how do you adapt to, the virtual world or being on, this different type of this social media and, this different environment where people are socializing. And I think, like you're saying, people sometimes will just internalize these comments, just take it right in, but maybe you can take some ownership and react to it in a different way and have more control over your life and not let what other people tell you bring you down on social media. I kind of threw that up out of my mouth, but sounds great.
Sounds good. Yeah. I think I've said this, I don't think I've ever said this in any type of recording or anything like this, but I say it to my friends all the time. People will say there needs to be a balance of good and bad in the world. And I really don't think that's true. I think that there can be only good. The only reason bad exists is because people are too lazy to find that good option sometimes. Sometimes the bad option presents itself a lot quicker and a lot more efficiently than the good one does. And it takes that extra effort to get around it. And that's to give an example, I guess, like with all the cancel culture stuff that's been happening on Twitter and everything, especially over COVID throughout the year, it's like when someone does something wrong, you don't need to immediately screenshot that and then take it to Twitter and put that person on blast.
Yeah.
There is an option to talk to that person, to educate them so that they actually don't make that decision again. Because putting someone on blast a lot of the time isn't going to make them not do it again. It's just going to make them dislike you and your cause even more than they already did, right? So I don't know. I've even had a case where like someone was getting canceled in the midst of it, and I literally, not knowing this person at all, DM'd them and was like, yo, I want to hear your side of things. What's going on? And they talked to me, and then we got in a Discord call. Like, it was so unnecessary and just like way out of my time, but it was just something I felt like doing. And I got in a call with this guy, and we talked through the whole problem. And he was like, yeah, I realized I did this wrong and this. And like, I don't know. I just helped the guy reflect on the problems that he had. And he fully admitted to me. He was like, yeah, like if it weren't for this conversation, I would have just hated these kids and kept busting their ass even more, Wow. So there's always ways around it. You just have to actually be willing to put in the effort. Too many people just bullshit and are like, oh no, this person's not going to change. They're always like this.
Yeah, that's almost an easier route. Then you can just make those assumptions and judge. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's also, I think, easier for people to, again, just put someone on blast than take all the exposure for it. Like, oh, this person hurt my feelings. And then everyone's there to support you and make you feel better, which isn't a bad thing. We want you to feel better. That's why you put out the tweet in the first place. But making the other person feel worse about themselves isn't always the solution, I think.
I'm guessing by you talking through it with him, a lot more happened. Like you probably learned in that situation as opposed to the other scenario where no progress.
I think here, you might have to re-ask that. Your mic might be disconnected. It sounds like there was no audio coming through. I heard from his.
Can you hear me?
It's pretty quiet.
Okay.
I mean, you're not hearing us at all right now?
Nothing?
I hear you. No, I hear you all right. But Devin's quiet.
I'm just kind of a quiet talker, so I'll try and project a little more.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, no, I figured if there were any problems, you could just cut and paste in the editing and everything.
You're good. Let us know, though.
Yeah, no problem.
Let's change direction. Okay. So can you tell us about O4 Collective, what that is and where that started?
Yeah, so O4 Collective, this kind of goes to the question you asked earlier of, would you ever be interested in doing your own label or something? So O4 Collective was my own label that I was running for about a year, and things were going amazing with it. I had such a talented roster of artists, upcoming guys that are just absolutely killing it now, and they were before as well, but they just didn't have the right exposure for it. And the idea of O4 came from the thinking that I mentioned earlier of there are different types of producers, and some people aren't willing to learn that business aspect themselves. And I feel like I had so many friends in my circle that are just ridiculously talented, and they have so much potential to be big artists, but they just don't have a manager, or they're not willing to take that business approach to go the extra step. And their careers will do well eventually just based on their talent, because managers will pick them up, labels will pick them up, they'll get found and such. But I wanted to be able to just give them a nice little stepping stone to kind of accelerate that process a little bit faster. And within our first year, we had, I believe it was 27 different artists and in the mid 20 range of releases total. And those releases meaning albums, EPs, singles, everything. And we got a couple million streams in total. So there was no reason really for me to close it. Things were just going up. But the reason I stopped is because I'm 19, I'm a kid. I'm in school, and O4 Collective did turn into a full-time job. And if you look back at my discography and everything, all the releases that I put out while I was running O4 Collective were old backlog songs that had been sitting on my computer already for a year or something. There was just no time for myself, because as well as working 2 jobs, being in school, managing Paper Skies, and running O4 Collective, I just didn't have a life. I was seeing no friends, no family, nothing. And just constantly on the grind for that. So I took a pause on it, because I was I don't think this is a good time for me. I want to make myself happy. I want to start putting myself on the ground. I haven't even moved out yet or anything. And hopefully within the next 4, 5, 6 years or so, I can pick back up on it. Because the biggest barrier we had was I saw how I could promote these artists further. To reference our last release, for example, the last track that we put out was by Eli Durpin Noir. It was called Burn. I think it was a stellar track. It's got really good reception and everything from a bunch of big artists in the comments and everything. And I saw so much more potential for it, but I couldn't get it where I wanted to, because I just didn't have the funding to push to those promotional outlets, which would have totally excelled the release. And it was why keep forcing myself to get to that point when I can take a break, take a step back, and then come back to it with all the funds that I need, all the education that I need. I have a year's worth of experience of running a label now. I can return with that experience at any point, you know?
That's so cool. So it is something that you plan on bringing back.
1,000%. But if I bring it back, I want to do it like bigger and better than ever. I don't want to start up another SoundCloud label or something. Like I want it to be something that like, if we sign an artist, you are seriously getting potential. Like I want to be able to, at the very least, 100,000 per track, like really just go crazy with it. And it's a big ambiguous goal, but I think you have to set it in order to see it, right?
Yeah.
So how does that translate? You say it turned into a full-time job. On the outside looking in, I'm sure there's a lot that goes into it, but I have no idea the inner workings of what it would look like to start up your own label. What was the day-to-day for that?
Basically, I was waking up, and from the second I would wake up, if it wasn't a school day, I was opening my laptop, which would be right next to my bed, and just getting to work immediately. And it was things from A&Ring releases to getting the artist, being able to chat with the artist about the releases and everything, do all of the artwork. And the artwork sounds like a small thing, but it's not only the album cover, it's also the wallpaper version of the album cover, which you then have to put in After Effects and animate all the individual layers for the YouTube upload. And then you have to do an Instagram crop size and an Instagram story crop size, and then like a Facebook version with your banner, and then a SoundCloud banner, like so many different iterations of the exact same artwork over and over again. And to complete one full set of iterations probably took me like over 20 to 30 hours just to be able to do the art alone. And then I had 3 staff members that were working with us that I was like not really even able to do full pay with because we weren't seeing any real massive income. The stats, streams, artists, songs, everything was going well, but income, and again, that was the problem, is I didn't want to have all this staff that, you know, I was hardly paying for all the work that they were putting in, but they were just as passionate as I was about this project. And we all put it in together, and everything ended up totally fine with that. We're all very happy with how everything went. But we had Jackson, who was the like business and marketing guy. He would look at ways that we can strengthen our spending so that we were getting the best results for it, looking into different playlist options, promotion options on like Facebook, Google ads, like different things like that, and trying to judge those. Ethan was the A&R who was looking into the artists and managing things, setting up the releases. And then me and Roaming were doing all of the creative side, which was the artwork, the advertising, making the actual social media posts and everything, getting the songs out, doing the distribution. There's like a whole lot of things I'm sure I probably haven't touched on either, because aside from the releases itself, you also have to think like, what else can we do as a record label that isn't just putting out music? So we were reaching out to different like video game contacts and stuff. We were looking for playlist options outside of Spotify. Could we get an official SoundCloud playlist? Could we get an official Deezer playlist? Could we get in a bunch of these weird places and these small niches that, you know, other labels haven't targeted yet? And it was just constantly looking for more and more opportunity. And that's where it got dangerous, is because you can spend like a full entire day doing work and get nothing out of it just because you spent that, because that work was literally just exploring options, you know? And that wasn't a lot of what I was doing. Most of my job entailed like the actual getting things done for the label. But it got to a point where I needed to start hiring people to like look into new ways we can make money, because there was just so much expansion happening.
So much. So ever get to a point, like, do you have any time where you just feel like, I'm good with what I'm doing right now? Like, it seems like you always have that itch in the back of your head, like, I should be doing something else, I should be doing something else.
I just always want to maximize my time. And that goes back to the whole scheduling thing, like of scheduling my day every time. It's like, I know there's always a way to be more efficient and more efficient. And I'm trying to find a balance of being as efficient as I possibly can while still keeping myself happy and mentally and physically well, right? So now I'm working way, way less than I was at that time. That was like my peak. I am fucked right now just with work. And even my friends were telling me, they're like, I don't think this is healthy for you. And I was like, yeah, I know, but I'm doing it. So it's not something to even brag about, honestly. Like, it was bad for me mentally. I got to like a really deep point of just like having no social life and being like super anxious about things. Just all I was doing is waking up, working. But I'm glad that's in the past for that reason. And I'm really excited to start up 04 Collective again, because I see so much potential for it. I just want to make sure I'm mentally in the right place and physically able to push artists to the degree that I'm hoping, you know?
Yeah, well, it's cool because it sounds like you got the groundwork laid and it's there for when you want to go back to it. So it's incredible. What do you look at as the label that you like, how the inner workings work? Like, what do you like from inside out? Like, what do you aspire to be like as far as 04 Collective?
I like the really big places like Universal and Sony and things, not just for the reason of them being big, but because they have connections within like publications in the movie world and like different industries that aren't just music. And that's how you get your music really big, you know, is going with labels like that are able to, while someone's scrolling through on their TikTok, the next 5 TikToks that they look at are all that song because it's trending on the website right now. Like only places like that I'd say really know how to accelerate in the social media field and really pick it up so that people are naturally finding the music and falling in love with it themselves. Besides that, a lot of the labels are like really, you know, let's you should put it in their faces and see if they like it sort of deal, which is totally fine. It's the way that they have to operate until they get to that point. But that's what I want to bring O4 Collective back as, is something that's not like, let's make it this all brandy and try and push ourselves. I would much rather be able to, for example, if you pretend I'm not Paper Skies, I would like to message Paper Skies, say, hey, we want to do a release for you. And it looks more like an independent release than it does a label release. We don't need to have the label slapped on in big text or anything. It can be underground. We can profit, but we can make the artist do well primarily. Like, this is your release. You are going to explode, you know?
That sounds much more attractive to an artist, right?
Yeah. Because labels will do these compilations and these EPs and these albums and all these things, and they're dope. They're super cool. But a lot of people will remember those artists for the label. Like the amount of times that I've been, you know, just known as the Rushdown artist as opposed to Paper Skies is like so overwhelming. You know, people will like be like, I'll join a voice call on Discord, a server I've never been on, for example, and you'll have a bunch of people be like, oh my God, Paper Skies is here. But none of them will listen to my music. They just know that I'm that guy from Rushdown, you know? So I want to change that mentality if I were to open O4 back up, because that's what we were doing, is that like people were starting to recognize, oh, this is an O4 release. And the whole goal is to make the artist be the forefront, right?
Cool. Sounds like it's needed in the industry. So how do you, we've been talking a lot about the difference between where you were a couple of years ago, like kind of maxing out, you're like, oh fuck, this is this is too much. To where right now you feel like you're maybe a little bit more eased up. Where do you think it's a constant balance of trying to find that kind of work chill balance, or where like how much thought do you put into that?
Quite a bit, especially recently. I've been focusing way more on the aspect of making myself happy as opposed to like seeing any sort of like monetary gain in any way. Like with COVID, like I was saying, you have to be there for yourself and make sure it's a tough time for everybody. And if we're really going to thrive when this ends, we have to make sure that we're mentally well and not putting ourselves in a bad place, because like real like sadness or depression or anything like that doesn't come from like one big incident or one bad thing that happens. Usually it's like a repetitious cycle of like, oh, you were sad on Monday and you were okay on Tuesday, but you were sad on Wednesday and Friday. And those 3 days together make up what is depression and sadness and all those things, right? It's only because it's happened multiple times. So right now it's like, and that depression or that sadness will affect you in the long term, whether you like it or not. So I'm just trying to stop myself from ever getting to that point. I don't think it will. I'm not anywhere close to that or anything, but just making sure my days are happy and filled with something that's worth remembering. So that when we come out of COVID, I come out with a good mindset and I'm not still bogged out like, oh, I can't believe this happened. You know, because I know there will be people that are going to be very caught up with the past, and it's going to be very hard for them to get over this last year that we've had in quarantine.
So important, man. So important.
So can you tell us about, you recently did a challenge to create a song. Was it right? 24 hours was the time limit. Can you tell us a bit about that? You know, who you did it with, what that was like, if you'd ever done something like that before, you know, how you felt about the final product. If you, just elaborate on it. That's such an interesting challenge.
Yeah, that was a really fun time, actually. There was a bit of a conflict after the check, actually, but before getting into that, it started off with Form was coming up. I knew that I wanted to do a song for Form because by December of 2020, I had like no releases set up. I had finished up what was going to be an EP, and I had sent it around to labels with no real response. And it was, again, that I did like, I make a lot of stuff that isn't particularly dubstep and isn't particularly like full melodic, you know? So it's hard for me to find a home for a lot of my music because labels are usually looking for one or the other. So yeah, it didn't really get too well received from a lot of the labels. I would get in comments like, oh, it's not heavy enough, you know, or, oh, it's like too heavy for us. And it's which one. But the EP then turned into a bunch of singles. So I've got a whole bunch of singles planned for this year now that I'm just releasing on various places. But before then, 2020, December, no schedule. I had one release set up for January, and I'm like, shit, I need more time to figure stuff out. So Form was a really good opportunity for me to make sure I had a release set up in February and more time to plan out the following months and everything. So I was kind of just like awaiting this day of being like, okay, the day of production is coming. The day of production is coming. And I hadn't produced for 2 weeks prior before then, not because I was trying to like hold myself back, but I was just like busy with things. So when I did work on that song, I was super inspired and I got it pretty quickly. But it was a thing of, I was in a call with some friends and I was like, I want to do a collab with Form, just like how Sky and Sharks and Azora had done that collab for the previous one. It just looked like a really fun way of working with your friends in a short time span and putting up something fun, right? And then my buddy Salem was like, oh, why don't you work with somebody in this server? And I don't know how it didn't dawn me. I was like, yeah, okay, I will. So it started off with Kazuki. He was in the call with us and I was like, hey, you want to work on the track together? And he was like, sure. So he's an ambient chill producer. He does like a lot, like big ambient soundscapes, a lot of garage stuff. And I was always wanted to work with him because I think his like atmosphere and focus on these big melodic textures would just work well with the slightly heavier sound that I have. And from there, he said, why don't we get Jetto involved, who is another melodic dubstep artist that really, really inspired me while growing up. I've always wanted to release a collab with Jetto, and we've worked on songs before together in the past that didn't really get anywhere past the first drop. So we've known each other for years, and he's been a huge inspiration to my music growing up. And he was like, yeah, you know what? I'm down to hop on this too. And then from there, Sharks messaged me a few days before the comp and was like, oh, I don't know what to do for Form. I think I'm just going to do a song by myself. And I was like, join in with us? They were like, sure. And next thing you know, we've got 5 people along with Slyleaf, the vocalist. And we finished the whole track in that one day.
Pretty hectic.
It was hectic, yeah. It was like, to give the structure, Kazuki started off the project file, and then that was first thing in the morning. And then I joined the call, and Kazuki and Sharks had already been talking for a little bit and working on the intro. And I was like, hey, I'm going to get started on a drop. So I made a new project and made what was inevitably the drop, like the first half of it. And then Sharks had worked on his own drop, which was the second half of it, and sent me that. And then when he sent it to me, I threw a bunch of my ideas onto his drop. So the whole second half of the tune is essentially me and Sharks. The whole first half of the tune is essentially Jetto and Kazuki. And once we had both of those parts done, we just started trading like sections and just adding little bits. So I was adding like small little like Paper Skies textures in the intro, same with Sharks. And then Jetto like replaced one of the saws in my saw stack with one of his, which is like a lot more clean and a lot more wide. And we just kind of like took the things that we were good at and helped improve all of each other's parts based on what we weren't good at, you know?
That's really cool. It seems like you like with the past releases, you have a good amount of releases with other people. Do you really enjoy working with other people when it comes to, I mean, that sounds like a fun event for the 24 hours, but do you like doing projects with other people?
Yeah, it's nice. I like working with my friends. I don't do collabs as often with people that I'm not too like friendly or too familiar with. But if I am, it's because I like that person or I've formed a friendship. It's never been a thing where I've collabed with somebody for the place or something, you know, like I'm not that type of person. But I'm trying to be more open now, working with people that aren't in my like direct circle. And it's going good. I do find it more challenging to work that way because the best collabs for me and the ones that have come out or are awaiting to come out have always been just like me and a friend in a call. They're working on a song and like, I'm like, oh, yo, since you just started this, is there any chance like I could like contribute a little bit? And they're like, sure. And then it becomes a collab without even saying it, you know?
Yeah. It's cool. It sounds natural that way.
Yeah.
Generally, I mean, it's always been Discord is where you network. Because I'm thinking in terms of, you know, people looking to get into EDM production, music production, the best place to network right now is Discord more than anywhere else. Is that the place to go to, you know, collaborate?
100%.
Maybe, you know, find some way to get into the pod. Is that the best place?
I'd say 1,000%. On Discord, you can find people of like all varying skill, especially with COVID right now, because even all the big guys are chilling on Discord, the ones who'd usually be out touring right now. And it's kind of surprising, like some seriously big names I'm kind of lucky to have chatted with recently. And it's only for the reason of they're not touring right now. They usually wouldn't be using Discord at all, but now they're every night, you know, logging on to League of Legends or something and just spending a couple hours chatting away. So yeah, the opportunity is there. So if anybody sees that while you can, But if not, regardless, like Discord is definitely the number one place to just meet people, get feedback, form a community, and start getting close with your listeners, or, you know, start getting close with an artist that you respect if you are one of their listeners.
That's such a cool idea. Who are some of the people, I know you mentioned Virtual Riot, but who are some of the people that you looked and tried to emulate when you were learning production?
I started off with essentially primarily Virtual Riot. He was like the biggest inspiration by far. And as things went on, it was just who I was listening to at the time. It's hard to bring it off the top of my head because my interest and my change in music has gone like so far everywhere. But let me think, are some names that I haven't mentioned yet. Honestly, a lot of the guys in my circle inspire me 10 times more than any artist that I listen to recently, especially because the big guys will inspire you, but it got to a point now where it's like, I know the type of sound that I want to have. And I know what these big artists sound like because I've been listening to them for years. So unless it's something completely crazy and new and fresh, it's usually not going to inspire me a whole ton. What inspires me the most is when I'm going to call out my friends and they accidentally do some really cool sound design technique. And I'm like, oh, whoa, if I like did that, but using this technique that I have, I could make this like tear out bass, a melodic tear out bass, and it'll sound really cool or something. Right. But say the guys in my circle, there's one artist named Gatito that I worked with recently. We did the song Nebula. We've been like best friends essentially online for the last 4.5, 5 years. And worked on numerous collabs. He gave me like 60% of my plugins that I have and everything. So if you want to talk about inspiration, then definitely that guy, because he has a very, very undiscovered sound. He's so talented, barely puts out music ever. And like gave me half of what I had. So that's what I mean, more or less. It's like the people that I keep in my circle have inspired me more than I even realized it, because they literally set up the foundation for my career, you know, and that's why I recommend small producers get on Discord, start talking to people, because it's going to help you in ways that you don't expect. I didn't think that by talking to Jetto 2 years ago, 3 years ago or something, that, you know, I would learn some of the strategies about how he does his leads. And then I started implementing that into mine and then adding my own strategies. And now I've got this new signature sound to Paper Skies, you know? It comes from all over the place. It's hard to say.
Cool. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but who would you think of when you think of somebody who is like pioneering the sound right now? And it could be someone from in your circle, like you're trying to talk about, or somebody outside. Who are some names that come up when you think of people that are like making their own genre sound?
For new sound, I'm actually going to, hopefully without driving too much time, open up a Spotify playlist and see if I can just find any picks there. Because there's definitely artists, but a lot of them that I need to pinpoint. One artist in my circle, to name one, is an artist named Def Sharp. He was like a dubsteppy, like neuro-y drum and bass kind of producer who did really, really, really technical stuff. And he hasn't put out a lot of it yet. He really hasn't. But he made a huge, huge shift recently to like kind of like this like chill R&B pop sort of feel, completely opposite of the music he was making before. But it is so, so good. And that's what I mean. I love steps like that. When people, they show off, hey, I have the technical skill, I'm a good producer, but I'm going to stick to this. You know, I like that stuff. I think guys like Cohen Sound has always really kind of been pushing the boundaries with their stuff. A lot of really, really dynamic mixes to take inspiration from. Ace Aura, I think, genuinely pioneered the whole like melodic color-based sound that's been coming up right now. And Sharks, I think, is, in my opinion, the best color-based melodic rhythm producer that's out there. So guys like that have been inspiring me and pushing that sound a lot. Other people, nothing coming to mind particular right now. I like listening to, there's an artist named Urban Dawn that I've listened to a lot recently. He's a drum and bass artist who does really chill stuff that reminds me of like the old Sonic video games that I used to play as a kid. That's been inspired me for sure recently.
That is. Can I try and bounce a couple names off you, see if you know of them? Or if
yes, please.
Okay. Fluco?
Fluco? Unfamiliar.
Okay. What about Former Hero?
Former Hero? Yeah. Former Hero's dope.
What do you think? Former Hero. I love him, but I'm curious to know what you think about him.
I think he's really sick. I love how he's really, really stuck with his style. Like, I can't say that I've been the biggest fan and engaging with every single one of his songs, but I've listened to his old stuff. I've listened to his new stuff. I've seen him grow as a producer without having to be too close with him. And he's made progress. Like, that guy has really, really gone somewhere with his music. I think that Bitbird is like the perfect spot for the type of stuff that he's been doing, and the chill, like sort of house but future bassy feel of everything, and seeing that sound like evolve like has been just really, really cool to watch. It's like it started off, in my opinion, kind of feeling sort of like basic at first, because it was just like this like house sort of idea in this future based setting that was kind of unfamiliar to me. But in repetition, as he kept doing it, you see how many different ways he's explored it. And that's what I appreciate in an artist, is when they know themselves and each one of their songs feels like an iteration or expansion of their ability, as opposed to like, I don't know, trying to be super different all the time and super like inspiring, you know? Like, you can tell when an artist is doing something because they like it and they're enjoying it personally, you know?
Totally agree. That's cool. Okay. Let's throw you oddball. Poutine. Overrated or incredible?
A bit of in between. It depends on the place. I've had really shit poutine that's just tastes like dirt. And I've had poutine that is the best thing I've eaten in my life. I don't know. I feel like it is a bit overhyped as like a Canadian dish. Like, when people are like, "Oh, what are good Canadian foods?" And you have that one guy that's always like, "Oh, you never tried poutine? Oh, you're missing out." You're like, you're not missing on that much. You can make it at home. It's fries and like cheese and stuff. Like, come on, man. But at the same time, yeah, I've had very good poutine.
I was completely an uncultured American, and I took a backpack trip with my girlfriend up to Canada last year, and we stumbled upon poutine, and I think it's incredible. But I didn't know about it. I was like, what is poutine?
How was it for you? Like, decent, life changing? What happened?
So it was life changing. It was a godsend, and we're had a couple drinks, and we're walking down a road in Whistler, and we see poutine on the side. That is exactly what I need. You know, but I had the kind of same experience though. There's definitely different tiers of it. Though we had some just like some slot poutine.
Tiers of poutine. I get it.
We had one with like duck. It was like duck poutine. I'm like, oh shit, we're fancy here.
Yeah.
That is my oddball question. What you've alluded to some projects coming up. Is there anything that you can tell us about what you have coming up as far as?
Yeah. I've got a lot of stuff coming with Lacuna Records, and for the same reason of what I was mentioning with the collabs. Eden, who is the owner, is a friend of mine. He's a really, really nice guy, and he did absolute wonders for my song Broken, which came out not too long ago. It's not often that I've had barely any releases hit 100K on Spotify, but that one literally got there within the first few months and has been like steadily rising as my second most like trafficked song. And I see a lot of potential in Lacuna. One thing about Lacuna specifically I've been talking to Eden about is like, they have such good promo tactics and such a good team behind it, and the ability is there. But I feel like a lot of the artists that release with them, they perform well on Spotify and everything, but a lot of people aren't willing to either A, remember the names, or care about the fact that they released on Lacuna. It's like that release is that release and then screws off. Nobody remembers anything anymore, you know? So I want to try and change the direction of Lacuna a little bit by releasing more with them, helping out Eden, who's just, again, a super nice guy and really trying to do a good thing in the industry here. And hopefully by releasing with them more, it'll inspire some other artists to send some demos, some artists that hopefully are like in it to stay with it, you know? Because when people are there to just use a label and then never have maintained a connection with them again, that kind of rubs me the wrong way. Like, a label is doing you an opportunity most of the time, especially if you're a small artist on SoundCloud. Whoever is behind that is putting in a lot of work for not a lot of reward at all, you know? So at least being a little grateful for it and trying to stick by that person goes a long way, right? But some singles with them. Got 3 tracks, I think, planned with them so far that are coming out across the year. I've sent off demos to some other pretty decently sized labels that I've done stuff with before and haven't done stuff with. I don't know how much I could chat about with that, but I'm excited for this year. I think it'll be a good one. Not the biggest year for my career, but one that I think is going to be an insane foundation for when COVID finally ends.
Mm-hmm. Kind of laying the groundwork, getting ready, preparing type of year.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I'm trying to just branch out to as many places across the internet as I can and make my fan base as big as possible. So hopefully if I ever get an opportunity to tour or something, I can have audiences from all over and not have to worry about like tackling one place.
All right. Okay. Well, I know you don't like to call them fans. I know you prefer to call them listeners, but
Well, I'm fine with it. It just feels strange to me, you know?
Well, either which way, you got 2 huge new fans here. So
Appreciate
really,
it.
I love the work, and I got put on by a friend, and he's a huge fan as well. Jeff, I got to shout him out because he told me to look.
Oh, Jack.
And I'm really looking forward. We're looking forward to seeing what you have coming out. Is there anything that you want to close with? Anything that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
I don't think anything too much. I guess, I have one thing I guess I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
Throughout this interview, and this is with every interview and everything I do, back to the comment again of like, what does it mean to start getting bigger as an artist? It's like, I have to compose myself. I feel a lot more professionally, especially because like, a lot of my audience is younger people that are into the gaming scene. A lot of people found my music through Geometry Dash, funny enough. So I need to, be aware of that and be careful. But despite all of that, I think for any artist that's listening to this, make sure you're being yourself and make sure you're being real. Because I know some of my answers in this probably sounded kind of industry, where it's like I'm using words like, oh, unintentionally, and to refer back to this note that was made, like all this stuff. But the more real you are with your fans and the more real you are with your listeners and the people that are supporting you, the more you're going to build a personal connection and have those people actually be there for you as a person and as a musician. Like if I'm not feeling well and I make a post on my social media or my Twitter or something about it, I know there are people that are genuinely going to be concerned and want to make sure I'm okay. And that to me means worlds over my stats and my music and everything. I'm just really, really grateful for all the support I've gotten. The fact that I can be on podcasts and interviews like this and get these opportunities. So yeah, stay with it, be yourself, and enjoy the process.
Right on. And just right before we end off here, best places to find you, best places to follow you. You're on Twitter, obviously, but where do you want people to find you? Where do you want people to follow you?
Yeah, I'm up everywhere. As much as I love people checking out my Spotify and my SoundCloud and stuff, please do. If you want to listen to some of my music, that's where I post everything primarily. Check out my Instagram, my Twitter, because I like to be personal. I like to connect with people. I get back to like probably not anymore, but for the past 5 years, I was getting back to every single comment on every single social media platform ever. From if a song was 5 years old and someone commented on it today, I would get back to it. I've been slowing down with that more now because I got to focus on myself mentally. It's hard for me to interact with everybody, but I get back to almost every DM, every message, everything. So hit me up on Instagram, Twitter. Let's chat if you have any similar interests. And that's it. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Cheers. Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Hey everybody, hope you all enjoyed the episode. Next week we interview Ethan Ramos, an upcoming artist in the Tucson area. He has a background in rap music and DJs throughout Tucson under the persona Suede. He's the creator of the Suede Collective and a man of many interests and talents. Tune in next week and join us for a cup of coffee as we get to know Ethan. Lastly, if you enjoy our content, please subscribe to our page wherever you listen to your podcasts and follow us on Instagram. And if you're feeling it, leave us a rating too. Appreciate you all. Stay caffeinated.